They say the market is a mirror, not of prices, but of people. And in that mirror, Jesse Livermore saw something most traders never do: himself. Before charts, before algorithms, before social media gurus promising overnight riches, there was a man who made and lost entire fortunes, not because he misunderstood the market, but because he understood it too well. He didn't trade tickers, he traded emotions. And in that battlefield of fear and greed, he discovered the one mindset that separates those who survive from those who vanish. If you could look into that mirror right now, the one Jesse Livermore used to see the truth of the market, what do you think you'd see staring back? Comment below and be honest with yourself. I remember reading about Livermore's first trade, a teenage boy in a bucket shop, armed with nothing but a chalkboard and an obsession. No charts, no internet, just the pure rhythm of price and crowd psychology. He didn't just want to make money, he wanted to understand why people lost it. That question became his obsession and his curse. Because Livermore learned something the hard way: the market doesn't reward intelligence, it rewards emotional control. You can know everything about trend lines and still lose if your own fear makes you sell too early or your greed makes you buy too late. As I narrate his story today, remember this: Livermore's secret mindset isn't hidden in any trading book. It's hidden in the pauses between your trades, in the sleepless nights after a loss, in that tiny voice that whispers, "Maybe next time I'll get it right." That's the voice Livermore learned to master. In this film, we'll walk through the psychology that made and destroyed one of the greatest traders in history. You'll see how his lessons from 1907 and 1929 still control the same emotions traders fight today: fear, hope, and the desperate need to be right. Because in the end, Livermore didn't just trade markets, he traded himself. But before he could master that mirror, he had to face the paradox that traps every trader, the one where success itself becomes the most dangerous thing you can have. The cruelest irony in trading is this: the moment you think you've conquered the market is usually the moment the market begins to conquer you. Livermore understood this paradox better than anyone. Imagine this: you've just turned a small account into a fortune. Every trade feels effortless, every dip feels like an opportunity, and every voice inside your head whispers, "You've figured it out." That's not confidence. That's the most seductive trap in finance: the illusion of control. He called it the invisible disease of success. Because when you start winning, your discipline quietly erodes. You begin to confuse skill with luck and conviction with arrogance. That's the paradox: the same confidence that fuels your rise often guarantees your fall. Every trader thinks they're rational until money is on the line. That's when the mind becomes the enemy, whispering lies dressed as logic. Livermore once said, "The game taught me the game." He meant that no amount of advice or theory could replace the brutal education the market itself provides. But the problem wasn't knowledge, it was emotion. The human brain is wired to survive danger, not manage risk. And when money moves, your survival instincts wake up. Be honest, how many times have you held a losing trade just a little longer, hoping it would come back? Tell me in the comments, we've all been there. That's the trap: hope. Hope is not a strategy, yet it drives most trading decisions. Hope keeps you from cutting losses. Fear keeps you from taking profits. Together, they create a prison, a psychological loop that Livermore knew too well. He described it as a cycle of self-deception. After a loss, you tell yourself the next trade will fix everything. After a win, you convince yourself you can't lose. In both cases, you stop thinking, you start reacting. The market becomes your emotional scoreboard, and every tick feels personal. In the 1920s, Livermore would walk through Wall Street and feel that energy, the crowd noise, the rumors, the optimism thick in the air. He realized that mass psychology didn't evolve, it just amplified. The same emotions that made people buy tulips centuries ago were still making them buy stocks. The market didn't change, only the tools did. He learned that the worst losses don't come from bad analysis. They come from good traders making emotional decisions. Every failed trader Livermore met had one thing in common. They couldn't detach from their own opinions. They needed to be right. And in that need, they lost everything. To Livermore, this was the core problem. People want to predict the market, but they refuse to predict themselves. He saw that the market punishes impatience, ego, and denial. Yet those are the exact emotions success inflames. That's why most traders rise fast and fall faster. Their psychology can't keep pace with their profits. And so Livermore made a vow not to conquer the market, but to conquer the man within. But how did he do it? How did he train his mind to see what others couldn't, to detach from the noise, the hope, the fear? That's where we turn to Livermore's own philosophy, his rules, his mindset, and the discipline that made him a legend. Have you ever felt that unstoppable streak, that moment where you believed you couldn't possibly lose? What happened next? Comment your story below, because that's where the truth begins. In Livermore's world, the market wasn't a chart. It was a living organism feeding on human emotion. The more you thought you understood it, the more it punished your certainty. He'd sit in his office surrounded by silence, watching prices flicker like heartbeats, and he knew the market was always right, but never kind. The paradox ate at him. Success bred confidence, confidence bred risk, and risk bred destruction. Every fortune he made carried the seed of the next disaster, yet he couldn't stop, because this wasn't just about money, it was about identity. He wasn't trading stocks, he was trading his self-worth. And so are many of us. Modern traders fall into the same cycle. After a winning streak, they double down, convinced they've learned the secret. They stop journaling, skip risk management, chase bigger rewards, and then, almost poetically, the market takes it all back. Not out of cruelty, but to remind you, you don't control the market, you control only yourself. This was Livermore's internal war, between discipline and desire, patience and pride. A war he fought alone, without indicators or AI or risk models, just pure psychological tension. And in that tension, he discovered the first truth of the secret mindset. A trader's greatest battle is never with the market, it's with his own reflection. But that reflection, that emotional turbulence, doesn't come from nowhere. It's built from something much deeper, a psychological trap that almost every trader falls into, and Livermore learned to name it. To Jesse Livermore, the market wasn't chaos, it was language. Every move, every tick, every panic, it all spoke if you had the patience to listen. He believed that trading wasn't about predicting the future, it was about interpreting human behavior. While others watched price charts, Livermore watched people. He saw markets as emotional thermometers. When prices moved too far, too fast, he didn't see opportunity, he saw psychological imbalance. Livermore once said, "The market is never wrong, opinions often are." And in that sentence lies his entire worldview. He didn't argue with the tape, he obeyed it. Because to him, every trader who fought the trend was not battling the market, they were battling truth itself. What about you? Have you ever ignored a clear signal just because your gut told you otherwise and paid the price for it? Comment your experience below. Livermore viewed the market as a mirror reflecting human emotion in motion, fear expanding, greed contracting. He said the price doesn't move because of numbers, it moves because of nerves. Every uptick is a heartbeat, every crash is a panic attack. So instead of trying to predict, he observed, he waited. He trained himself to feel when the crowd was too sure, when optimism smelled too sweet, when fear felt too thick. That was when he acted. He didn't follow the herd, he followed its exhaustion. And this is what made his mindset different. Where others sought to be right, Livermore sought to be aligned. He didn't care if his opinion was correct. He cared if his position was correct. That's the shift most traders never make. They tie their ego to their analysis, and when the market disagrees, they defend their pride instead of their capital. Livermore, by contrast, treated emotion as data. When others panicked, he saw confirmation. When others grew euphoric, he saw warning. His secret wasn't prediction, it was perception. He understood that a market's mood changes before its price does, and those who can read the mood survive the storm. He once remarked, "It was never my thinking that made me the money, it was my sitting." Patience wasn't a weakness, it was his edge. He knew that sometimes the best trade was no trade, that waiting for the perfect emotional imbalance was worth more than 100 impulsive entries. Livermore's perspective wasn't about beating the market, it was about synchronizing with it, to move when it moves, to rest when it rests. He became less of a trader and more of a mirror himself, reflecting the psychology of others without letting it corrupt his own. But even the greatest mirrors can crack. And one day, Livermore faced a real-world moment where all his rules, all his philosophy, would be tested in the fires of panic and euphoria. It was 1929, the year the world learned what fear really sounds like. Jesse Livermore sat alone in his office, high above the chaos of Wall Street. Outside, brokers were screaming, tickers were jammed, and telephones rang like alarms. The market wasn't just falling, it was collapsing. In a single week, fortunes disappeared, banks trembled, America's confidence cracked. But Livermore, the man the press once called the Great Bear of Wall Street, was calm. Because months earlier, he had seen it coming. He didn't predict a crash, he recognized a psychological fever. Every newspaper headline had been euphoric. Every taxi driver had an opinion on stocks. Ordinary people were borrowing money just to buy shares that were already inflated. Livermore didn't see numbers, he saw human mania. And so, while the world celebrated, he sold, quietly, relentlessly. He went short. And when the market finally broke, he made one of the largest profits ever recorded by a single trader, over $100 million in 1929 dollars. Now imagine this, if you saw everyone around you getting rich, would you have had the nerve to bet against them? Be honest, comment below. But here's the real story, the one that isn't printed in the newspapers. Even in victory, Livermore wasn't celebrating. He knew what others didn't. He hadn't beaten the market, he'd survived it. Because he understood that this wasn't about intelligence, it was about detachment. He had trained himself to see the market's madness without joining it. That's the essence of his secret mindset, emotional neutrality in emotional times. He didn't take joy in others, losses, or pride in his win. To him, it was all part of the same cycle, a human pendulum swinging between euphoria and despair. His job wasn't to control the swing, it was to measure it. The newspapers called him a genius, others called him heartless. But Livermore didn't see himself as either. He saw himself as an observer, a student of the crowd, disciplined enough to stand apart from it. And yet, even he was human. Even he would later fall victim to the same emotions he once mastered. Because no trader, no matter how great, ever fully conquers the self. The market has a way of humbling even its prophets. And that's exactly what happened next, the moment when Jesse Livermore, the man who once conquered panic itself, found himself trapped in his own emotional downfall. Every legend, eventually, meets the one enemy he can't outthink, himself. For Jesse Livermore, that moment didn't arrive with fanfare. It came quietly, disguised as success. After the crash of 1929, he was richer than ever. Newspapers hailed him as a prophet, the man who outsmarted Wall Street's collapse. But inside, he was empty. He'd spent decades mastering human psychology, yet he couldn't escape his own. Because here's the truth, success doesn't silence the mind, it amplifies it. The same voice that once whispered caution now whispered invincibility. And that's where it began. He started to ignore his own rules, the rules that made him great. He entered trades too soon, held positions too long, listened to tips he once would have ignored. The emotional detachment that had once been his armor slowly turned into arrogance. He thought he'd evolved beyond the rules, but the market never forgets. Have you ever broken your own rules after a big win, only to regret it later? Drop your story in the comments. Every trader has lived that irony. Livermore's life began to spiral. His trading accounts bled, his confidence fractured. He'd look at the tape, the same moving stream of numbers that once felt alive in his hands, and feel nothing but confusion. He was no longer reading the market, he was chasing it. The man who once stood apart from the crowd was now part of it, emotional, reactive, desperate to get even. He once said, "It is what people actually do in the stock market that counts, not what they say they are going to do." And what he did now was exactly what he warned others against. Loss after loss, position after position, the weight of his past success became unbearable. Reporters mocked his downfall, friends distanced themselves, and the same financial world that once cheered him now watched in silence. He wasn't just losing money, he was losing identity. In one of his private notes, he wrote, "The most difficult thing in speculation is not to act when the market goes against you." He had built his empire on patience, but now impatience ruled him. He knew the cycle, he'd warned about it, yet he couldn't escape it. And here lies the ultimate paradox. The trader who mastered emotion was undone by emotion. Not by greed, not by ignorance, by humanity. It's easy to call him reckless in hindsight, but imagine the weight of knowing you once held perfect clarity, and now you've lost the very instinct that defined your existence. For Livermore, that realization wasn't just painful, it was tragic. But even in his darkest moments, Livermore left behind the greatest insight any trader could ever learn, a rule that rose from the ashes of his own despair, and one that continues to guide traders a century later. Out of every market collapse, every psychological breakdown, and every sleepless night, Livermore forged one rule, one sentence that carried the weight of all his victories and all his failures. The big money is not in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting. That was it. The essence of decades of triumphs and collapses compressed into a single truth: patience is the most profitable trade in history. Livermore realized that every mistake he'd ever made came from the same weakness: impatience. When he waited for the market to show its hand, he thrived. When he forced it, he failed. He called it the law of natural market movement, meaning you don't push the market, you follow it. You let it unfold, like watching a tide come in. The moment you try to force a wave, you drown in it. If you could go back to your last losing trade and simply waited, do you think the outcome would have changed? Comment your thoughts below. To Livermore, patience wasn't just time, it was discipline crystallized. He'd sit for weeks, sometimes months, without making a single trade. People called him lazy, disconnected, even scared. But when he finally moved, the markets trembled. That waiting wasn't passive, it was preparation. He watched for crowd psychology to peak, for emotion to distort reason, for the tape to whisper imbalance. Only then did he act, without hesitation, without emotion. His timing wasn't luck, it was mastery of stillness. He learned that the true battle isn't about knowing when to enter, but when not to. Most traders lose not because they can't read the market, but because they can't sit still long enough to let the truth reveal itself. Livermore once wrote, "Men who can both be right and sit tight are uncommon." That was his secret mindset and his ultimate gift to every trader who came after. He understood that waiting doesn't just protect capital, it preserves sanity. Because when you wait, you let emotion burn itself out. You see clearly what others can't. The impatient trader sees opportunity. The patient trader sees inevitability. Livermore's greatest trades were never about speed, they were about silence. He turned stillness into a weapon. He learned that you don't have to chase every move. You have to position yourself where the next big move must eventually pass. And that's the breakthrough. He wasn't predicting markets. He was aligning with their natural rhythm, letting crowd emotion become his compass. But what does that mean for us today, in a world of high-frequency trading, 24/7 crypto markets, and endless noise? Can Livermore's century-old mindset still survive in the modern digital battlefield? The charts have changed, the platforms have changed, the speed has changed. But the human brain, it hasn't evolved in 100 years. The same emotional circuitry that guided Jesse Livermore's trades in 1929 controls every trader today, whether they're on Wall Street or trading Bitcoin from their bedroom. Fear, greed, hope, regret, the variables are identical. The technology just amplifies them. Livermore's world had silence between trades. Ours has notifications. He had time to think. We have time to panic. And that's why his mindset matters now more than ever. How often do you catch yourself opening your trading app just to check your position, even when you promised yourself you would? Be honest. Comment below, you're not alone. Modern traders are drowning in immediacy. You see candles flicker in real time, you hear influencers scream, "Buy now," on social media, and the dopamine rush of instant feedback becomes addictive. You're not trading data, you're trading emotion on demand. Livermore would have called it overtrading of the soul. He believed that most losses came not from ignorance, but from the inability to wait. And today, waiting is harder than ever. Think about it, Livermore's greatest edge was silence. He had no algorithm to distract him, no Twitter to amplify noise. His focus was deep, almost meditative. That's what traders today have lost, the art of stillness. To apply his mindset now means learning to slow down the mind while the world speeds up around you. That means journaling your emotions after every trade, not just your entries and exits. It means defining your setups before the market opens and refusing to deviate no matter what the screen shows. It means remembering that the market isn't there to confirm your beliefs, it's there to test your patience. Livermore would look at today's traders and see one thing: too much noise, not enough nerve. He'd tell them the same thing he told himself: if you can't control yourself, you can't control your money. In the age of speed, his mindset becomes revolutionary. To slow down, to wait, to detach. He'd say, let the crowd chase excitement, let the crowd react. Your job is to observe. Modern traders who master that, who learn to trade like it's 1929 again, with patience and clarity, become dangerous. Because they're no longer slaves to emotion or volatility. They've learned what Livermore learned: the market doesn't destroy traders, traders destroy themselves by reacting too fast. And if there's one advantage that can't be coded into an algorithm, it's emotional intelligence. That's the new edge, and it's the same old truth. So how do you actually build that kind of discipline, not in theory, but in daily trading life? How do you train your mind to think like Livermore's, calm, detached, and razor-sharp in a world built to distract you? Mindset means nothing without method. Livermore didn't just think differently, he lived differently. Every habit, every action was a reflection of his internal discipline. If you want to trade like Livermore, not copy his trades, but emulate his clarity, then you must build a process that protects you from yourself. Let's break that down step by step. Step 1, the daily silence. Livermore began every trading day alone, no noise, no chatter. He needed his mind clear before he faced the crowd. Today, that means no social media, no news, no signals in the first hour. Before you even open your chart, open your mind. Sit with your thoughts. Ask, am I trading today because I see opportunity or because I'm bored? That one question can save your capital. Step 2, the emotional journal. Livermore didn't have trading journals like we do, but he remembered every mistake. You should too. After every trade, win or lose, write down exactly how you felt when you entered and exited. Not what the chart did, what you did. Patterns will emerge. Maybe you trade out of revenge. Maybe you overtrade when confident. Your emotional patterns are your true market indicators. Step 3. Define your no-trade zone. Livermore's power came from knowing when not to trade. He would sit tight for weeks, sometimes months, waiting for the right setup. So define your no-trade criteria. If volatility is unclear, if your plan isn't aligned, if your emotions are high, you do not trade. You protect your capital by protecting your clarity. Step 4. The rule of alignment. Livermore said, trade only when the general market and your stock move together. That means alignment between trend, volume, and emotion. If one piece is off, wait. Don't fight the market's rhythm, dance with it. You're not trying to be first, you're trying to be in tune. Step 5. Build detachment through distance. He often left New York entirely after a big win or loss. Why? To regain psychological distance. Modern traders can do this too. Step away from screens, walk, breathe, let the market's noise fade. Distance builds perspective, perspective rebuilds patience. Which one of these steps hits you the hardest? The silence, the journal, or the no-trade zone? Comment below. Your answer might reveal the exact discipline you've been avoiding. Livermore's strength wasn't that he was fearless, it's that he respected his own weakness. He built systems to protect himself from impulsive behavior because he knew brilliance is useless without restraint. If you start practicing even one of these steps, just one, you'll notice it. Fewer forced trades, more patience, clearer entries. And slowly, the market will stop feeling like chaos and start feeling like rhythm. Because that's what Livermore mastered, rhythm. He didn't fight the tide, he floated with it, but with direction. And that's the discipline every trader must rebuild in this new, frantic age. But every story needs an ending, not just of lessons, but of legacy. And Jesse Livermore's story didn't end with wealth or fame. It ended with reflection, a final message to every trader who dares to follow his path. When the ticker tape finally stopped, when the lights of Wall Street dimmed, and the noise of the crowd faded into silence, all that remained was a man and his reflection. Jesse Livermore died in 1940, leaving behind a note that spoke not of money, but of mind. He wrote, "My life has been a failure." But the truth is, it was. Because his story became the foundation of modern trading psychology. Every stop-loss, every emotional rule, every mindset lesson we repeat today, it began with him. He lived through both extremes of the market, euphoria and despair, and revealed a truth most traders never face. The market will test everything about you except your intelligence. That's the paradox. The smarter you are, the more the market will challenge your patience. The faster you move, the more it will reward stillness. The louder you shout, the more it will whisper. And that's where Livermore's legacy lives, not in fortune, not in failure, but in awareness. He proved that trading is not about beating the market. It's about becoming emotionally invisible to it. When you can win without euphoria and lose without despair, you've graduated. When you stop trading to prove something and start trading to understand something, you've arrived. That's the mindset Jesse Livermore wanted you to find. Calm in the chaos, discipline in the noise, faith in the process, not the prediction. He once said, after a man makes money in the stock market, he must learn to be a man all over again. Because success doesn't teach you who you are, failure does. And in both, the market is only a mirror reflecting your own reflection back at you. So now I'll ask you, if you looked into that mirror today, the one Jesse Livermore used to face every morning, what would you see? Would you see discipline, patience, clarity, or emotion, haste, and doubt? Comment below, because that reflection is the first step toward mastery. As the final credits of his life rolled, Livermore left behind no lasting fortune, but he left something far more valuable, a framework for enduring truth. That the greatest trade you will ever make is not long or short. It's the trade between your ego and your evolution. So remember, don't rush, don't chase, don't predict. Wait, because waiting isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And in that silence lies Jesse Livermore's secret mindset every trader must know.